Hey, this is Tony from Airguns, Air Rifles, and Pistols. Today I have a Brocock Compatto with me. These were just released at SHOT Show. It's a MSRP right around $1,000, $9.99, available from Airguns of Arizona, Trenier Outdoors, and other vendors who carry the Brocock line. It's an extremely lightweight bullpup design, coming in at right around 5.5 to 6 pounds without a scope on it. Right now I have a small Trenier 4 to 16 by 40 scope on here. This Brocock is in .22 caliber. It has a couple really interesting features that we're going to go over. The primary ones are it does not have a regulator built in because of the design of the Brocock. Brococks are currently built by Daystate, and they have what they call a Slingshot hammer design. In a few minutes we'll get to Tony from Daystate, who will explain a little bit more. It'll be some audio we captured while we were at SHOT Show. This is a 22 model. It has a 200 bar max fill, advertised with 3 power settings. I'm going to bring this in here a little closer, and you can see that power adjustment wheel right there next to the cocking handle. It's indexed for 3 different settings. It has a low, a medium, and a high setting. At low, you're supposed to get around 20 foot-pounds of energy out of it. When you go up to the high setting, you're looking at about 30 foot-pounds for a 22. They recommend using 16 grain pellets for it. So far we've seen some really great accuracy out of that. It's a semi-bullpup in that if you take a look at the back here, the action doesn't come all the way back to the buttstock. It actually comes up a little further up forward. The rifle itself so far is great. It shoulders very nicely, very quick. It is on the lightweight side, as I said, and I think it's going to be a real big hit here in the States. A couple features of it: it does have a nice little, appears to be resin polymer stock. In the front, it does have a rail attachment, so you can put a bipod on it, mount a light, or any other accessories that you would like. It does have a dovetail for the scope mount on it, as you can see here. And overall, I really like it. Safety's built in at the trigger. I'm going to bring that forward here. You can see the safety is a little rocker bar right in front of the trigger. Adjustable cheek riser via the rear butt plate. 10-shot self-indexing magazine that slides in. Overall, really nice rifle. The front of it is threaded, so that if you do want it to be a little more backyard friendly, they do offer TKOs, LDCs, use whatever choice word you want. Front manometer for your pressure on it. I'm really impressed with the weight on this. I can't believe how lightweight it is, considering a lot of the other rifles that we're seeing, especially in bullpup designs, that are pushing the 8 to 10 pound mark these days. 30 shots out of it seems to be no problem even at high setting. It makes for a very great multi-purpose rifle. At 20 foot-pounds on the lowest setting, you're likely to get the ability to use it for field target or hunter field target here in the US. And at 30 foot-pounds, it'll make a great field gun, great for small game hunting, pesting, and the like. So this is the Brocock Compatto. We'll get some shot strings out there. We'll get some accuracy testing for you. Thanks, and we'll also get some words from Tony from Daystate a little later on.
So you've got a rifle that's probably going to do around 35 to 40 shots per charge. It's got a more conventional layout. It's although it's not a conventional rifle because the action's been brought back. By doing that, we've reduced the length of the rifle down quite considerably. Not as much as an impact, but nevertheless a useful amount. But the handling is more what you'd be used to. You know, you haven't got the high mounts and you haven't got all the stuff. I've got to say, as a hunting rifle, it's sleek, it's easy to use, it's robust. You know, it's coming in this ABS stock. There's not a lot to knock off it, and it's all weatherproof. You've got complete corrosion resistance everywhere, and you have, of course, 3 power settings. So it's got a low power, medium power, and a high power. And low power is about half that of the high power 30 foot-pounds. And it's very easy to adjust. You know, there's no regulated pressures to change or anything like that. Okay. It's not regulated, but it has our Slingshot hammer system in there. And we think, whereas a regulator is 50% efficient over a standard gun. The Slingshot system is 40% efficient. So it's not far behind a regulator, but you don't have the cost, the complexity, and the servicing which you get on regulators, which is something that people don't think about when they buy the gun, but they have to think about after a couple of years when they have to have a very expensive service take place on what is a watch-like sophisticated piece of engineering. And this doesn't need any of that and shoots better for it. Because it doesn't have a regulator, it's also using high pressure air. And high pressure air is quite important. Once you get past the fixation of muzzle velocity, you start to think about ballistic coefficients and the way that pellets work on a target. And you know that a good ballistic coefficient means more than muzzle velocity because it's actually flattening the curve. And that's what high pressure air does for an air gun. So it actually makes the trajectory flatter even though the muzzle velocity stays the same. So these sort of details are in this rifle. 10-shot rotary magazine, straight pull bolt, very simple to use, light cocking action, beautiful trigger with a paddle safety catch in the front of the trigger guard. Picatinny rail on the front, AB66 stock, so it's like, you know, the ballistic polymer that we're all talking about. This solid piece of engineering, adjustable butt pad. There's a pressure gauge on the front with probes that are filling the system. Shrouded barrel with a reflex part in there, and it's threaded for a 1/2 inch UNF stance, which is on this rifle. You know, really, it's kind of all you need.
So at high power,
it's about 30 foot-pounds.
30 foot-pounds,
yeah.
and how many shots on a fill?
35 to 40.
35 to 40. Little under double that if it's at low power, I'm assuming.
Yeah, exactly. It goes. It's exactly where it goes to. Yeah.
And barrel fully rifled?
It's a Lothar Walther barrel.
Oh, it is? Oh,
so you've got everything in there. 10-shot rotary magazine.
Any pellet length issues with some of the bigger 22s? I know JSB has...
Nothing outside something custom made that's going to have a problem with that. That's designed around all the standard JSB H&M pellets. Anything that's going to shoot straight is going to go in that magazine. I mean, I'm a target shooter gone wrong. You know, I basically come from a target discipline and do hunting because that's what we make. We make hunting rifles or target rifles, and deliberately as well. But you know, this is the sort of gun that I would pick, even with my target roots. This is accurate, it's good, but there's a lot of faffing around with target rifles. You've got all this adjustability and stuff like that. You know, ultimately you want to enjoy yourself, and you want a gun that plays a part in that. And I think that's a very nice sort of rifle.
So the last question I have for you on it, because you did mention adjusting. Outside of that, since you're on the different system for the hammer, so nothing else can really be adjusted on it. Just what you got.
No, because it's you know, it is a Brocock, so it's not a Daystate, but of course it's being built at the Daystate factory by Brocock personnel, but trained by Daystate engineers. So there's a lot of Daystate in that rifle, and the Slingshot hammer system is actually the very latest version of it, redesigned by Harper for this rifle. What happens is, you have a thing called a self-regulating valve, which have been in PCPs for 400 years. And what happens is that you have high pressure air, which you knock open, and a small amount of very high pressure air leaks out and produces an energy. And you design the gun so that all guns will have a point where there's too much pressure, where you won't get enough power, and then it'll climb, and then when it reaches a peak, it'll start to drop. And what you do is you engineer it so that curve is as flat as possible. And volume helps, because the more the volume, you stretch the line. If you've got very low volume, you're going to have that. So we're using quite comparatively high volumes these days to stretch the line. But there are other things you can do to influence that curve. And of course you can put a regulator in, which means it picks a section of the curve and keeps it there. But what section? The ballistic coefficient works best to high pressure. If you're going to push a car from standstill, if you give it a push, 4 of you, then one person can push it. You can move the Queen Elizabeth boat with a horse once it's moving. It's getting it moving in the first place is the trick. You need a lot of horses to do that. And that's the same on anything you're trying to move. And a pellet and a barrel is identical. It's that initial impact it needs. And if you're giving it a slow, long push, as you do with low pressure air, then the efficiency of the engine is not good. You've got to do that every time you fire at low pressure. So high pressure air gets that pellet moving fast, quickly, You're using less air then afterwards, and it turns out the ballistic coefficient is far better when using high pressure air. So ideally, you want to use high pressure air, but you're only going to get it at high pressure, you see, so it's going to drop quite quickly. So what we do is the hammer hits the valve, opens it, and some air leaks out, and that gives you 30 foot-pounds. You hit it again, there's less pressure, but more volume comes out because it holds it open slightly longer, because there's less spring to keep it closed. And that's how it works. With the Slingshot system, we don't actually hit the valve. What we do is we have a cage that comes forward and it crashes into the valve face, but it doesn't hit the valve. There's an internal rearward sprung central mass, which then inertia comes forward and knocks the valve open. But because it's rearward sprung and it's quite light, it's pulled out of the way, and the closing valve is not overcome by it. Because with a conventional hammer, it works perfectly there, but when the pressure is quite lower, it's overriding the air. So you get enough air for the pellet, but an awful lot of air behind it, and that's wasted air. So by keeping that hammer out of the way, we get a 40% increase in shot capacity. We get a better, flatter curve. We get a better sounding rifle. We haven't got the rasp you get on an unregulated gun, and it just works absolutely. It's a genius design, and we've refined it over the last sort of 7 years since we've introduced it, and it's been getting better and better and better. And now I'm listening to people say, oh, I put a regulator in it. Yeah, ruin the gun if you want, because it's going to not be as good with a $150, $200 regulator as it was when it came out of the factory. Because it's got this Daystate pedigree, it's very heavily engineered, so there's an awful lot of effort gone into getting the valve transfer port size right, the spring right, the slingshot gap right, because you can actually adjust the slingshot to give it greater or lesser gap to increase or lower the power slightly, but it's all matched engine. And when you shoot it, it's absolutely accurate. I'd take that up against a Steyr, no problem at all. And it's 1/4 the price of a Steyr, and every bit as nice to own.
No, that's perfect, because I'm glad you mentioned the target background too. That you answered tons of questions, Tony.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Anytime. Yeah.
I appreciate your help.
No, don't drop it again.
I got to see that again first.
Yeah, actually,
They do bounce, don't they? Yeah.
So we did a few test shot strings to see what kind of power we were able to get from the Brocock Compatto. We're using 15.89 GSB exact pellets. Filled to 200 bar at low setting, medium setting, and high settings. We did 3 10-shot groups at each to bring the average to see what we were getting out of it. Here we ran into a couple problems. This rifle proved to be a little underperforming. We were not getting near the power that we should get out of it. Talking to Precision Airguns, the distributor for the Brocock line, they agreed there was something with the rifle that wasn't quite up to par. We were still seeing the accuracy and the precision we expected. The power levels just weren't there. We were looking at a maximum power that we were getting at high setting that was just a little under 18 FPE. With these 15.89 pellets, that was an average of about 715 to 720 feet per second. They want us to send the rifle back so they could take a look at it and see just what's going on here. Mind you, we are in a rather cold day here in Wisconsin, snow on the ground, a little wind blowing. That might be part of it. We're not sure. We'll have to continue this review at a later date and give it a second try after we see what's come of this testing. That said, the power adjuster did work as advertised. At a low setting for these 15.89 GSBs, we got an average right around 665. Medium setting, that brought that up to about 690. And at the high setting, we're seeing anywhere from 715 to 725, depending on the string. Overall, I still would recommend the Brocock Compatto, especially if you're looking at a bullpup. While it is a semi-bullpup, it is still extremely lightweight, well-balanced, easy to shoulder, easy to get on target, and at the $9.99 price range, it's probably going to be the most lightweight bullpup that you're going to find out there right now. The composite stock is very easy to clean, it's easy to maintain, it looks really sharp, and really does a great job as far as bringing this rifle at that price point and giving it a little more polish. So even with the problems we saw, I would still recommend the Brocock Compatto. We'll see what happens in future testing after we get it back from Precision Airguns of Arizona, and we see just what it does when it's actually shooting at the advertised power. This is Tony for Airguns, Air Rifles, and Pistols. Thanks for your time. Please visit our website. We have a classified ad section up now if you want to sell your own air guns and accessories. In addition to that, we do have our Facebook group and our Facebook page for our website.